Hi there, welcome to the latest episode of my 10-minute moan. And the topic of this 10-minute moan is the WhatsApps that have been revealed by the Mail on Sunday that show that the Labour government are totally opposed and are going to kick back against the Supreme Court judgment that defined what a woman is. This is incredible because the Labour ministers have all been saying how they're going to accept the Supreme Court hearing, but the Mail on Sunday have been able to uncover WhatsApp group messages that suggest the total opposite, and they're indeed plotting ways to combat and overturn this judgment. So I'm just going to read verbatim from their article, and then I'll give some additional information and my opinion to the article. So the headline is exclusive: Labour's WhatsApp plot to defy trans ruling. Ministers' leaked messages reveal their fury at calls to ban transgender women from female-only changing rooms. Labour ministers are secretly plotting to defy the landmark court ruling that men who change gender are not legally women. Leaked WhatsApp messages obtained by the Mail on Sunday have revealed. The government claimed to welcome the Supreme Court judgment, but the exchanges reveal the private fury on Sir Keir Starmer's front bench, with ministers planning to hold a meeting this week to decide a way forward and organise. In the messages sent on Thursday evening, Culture Minister Sir Chris Bryant joined an attack on Baroness Falkner, the chairwoman of the Equality and Human Rights Commission, who earlier that day had said that the ruling that a woman is defined by biological sex clearly meant trans women could not use single-space female facilities or compete in women's sports. When an MP said that Lady Falkner's words were pretty appalling, Mr Bryant wrote, agreed. Last night, with the government in turmoil, Tory leader Kemi Badenoch wrote to the Cabinet Secretary calling for an investigation into a statement by Equalities Minister Bridget Phillipson, who reacted to the judgment by saying, "We have always supported the protection of single space based on biological sex." In her letter to Sir Chris Wardmaid, who is also the head of the civil service, Ms Badenoch argued that it could constitute a false public statement because last June Ms Phillipson declared that trans women with penises should be able to use single-sex spaces. They're playing two sides here. Writing on WhatsApp group on LGBT plus Labour MP's Home Office Minister, Dame Angela Eagle, said the ruling is not as catastrophic as it seems, but the EHRC guidance might be, and there are already signs that some public bodies are overreacting. A possible reference to the British Transport Police's interim announcement that strip searches of trans women would now be done by male officers, not female. Dame Angela added, "We have to get on with doing the stuff we said we'd do in the manifesto," which included a pledge to protect the freedom for people to explore their sexual orientation and gender identity. Well, nobody's saying you can't explore your gender identity or your sexuality. You just got to respect the vast majority, the 99.5% of the rest of the population. Another MP in the WhatsApp group wrote that it was sad to see some institutions choose to ignore the Supreme Court's very strong line that trans people are protected by Equality Act 2. Dame Angela replied, "They won't be feeling that way now, and we need to remember that and organise." MPs agreed with her suggestion that they should seek a meeting as soon as possible with the relevant Equality Minister. After Commons returns from Easter recess this week, news of the WhatsApp messages came as thousands of trans rights campaigners descended in central London yesterday to rally against the landmark ruling. The emergency demonstration ended with at least two statues in Parliament Square daubed with graffiti. The fag rights and a heart painted on the banner held by suffragette militant Fawcett. Trans rights or human rights was also sprayed on a pedestal bearing a memorial to South African military leader Jan Christian Smuts. Yesterday, other bodies vowed to challenge the ruling, with teachers voting a conference in Liverpool to stop schools making knee-jerk changes to their trans policies until the government issues further guidance. What more guidance do you need than wee girls are female, wee boys are male? That's quite... And being teachers, you should sort of kind of know about things like biology, common sense, logic. The NUSUWT union claimed the judgment could lead schools to make rules which puts transgender teachers at risk of harm. By doing what? By doing what? These people are nuts. Labour has come under fire over its response to last Wednesday's unanimous verdict. Health Minister Karen Smythe failed 4 times to clarify which changing rooms trans women should now use. In contrast, Lady Falkner, who hailed the ruling for bringing clarity, told the BBC single-sex services like changing rooms must be based in biological sex. If a male person is allowed to use a women-only service or facility, it isn't any longer single-sex. Hallelujah! Common sense and logic. She also agreed that the enormously consequential court decision also meant trans women could not take part in women's sport. Again, should never have been allowed in the first place. If there's this big push for men being allowed to take part in women's sport, regardless of how they want to view themselves as trans women, why is there no such a great push to allow women to take part in men's sports? Well, let me tell you why. Because in the vast majority of sports, men have got a physical advantage. So you don't get any trans women, trans men, I keep getting confused, women who present as men want to play in men's sports, particularly team sports. Doesn't really happen, does it? When you consider, and this shocked me the other day when I found out, the split between women becoming men and men becoming women, I thought the men becoming women would have far outweighed it. But apparently, according to census stats anyway, it's about a 50-50 split. Yet the vast majority of the time you hear people demanding rights and want to do this and I want to do that, it's men who present as women. Isn't that crazy? Where do we get to? Lady Falkner, whose watchdog is working on an updated code of conduct for public services, said the NHS would now be pursued if it did not follow new guidelines on single-sex spaces. And this is fantastic for the woman up in Fife, who's taken she's been, accused of being transphobic because she wanted to be able to get dressed in a women's only space in a hospital in Scotland. Fantastic news for her. Current guidance says trans people should be accommodated according to how they identify. In 2023, Lady Falkner survived attempts to oust her from her job because of her staunch defence of women's rights after the Mail exposed claims of an ideology-motivated witch hunt against her. Interviewing on BBC's Today programme last week, Nick Robinson said her position has brought you extraordinary levels of personal grief, including one described as a Nazi who wants to dehumanise trans people. Mims Davis, Shadow Minister for Women and Equality, said in public Keir Starmer and his cabinet pretend they supported the Supreme Court judgment, but in private, we now know Labour are seething, and these texts prove it. Like so many brave women, Baroness Falkner has suffered terrible abuse for standing up for the rights of women and girls. We now know Labour will do all they can to undermine her work. The Prime Minister needs to come out and say he will support the EHRC guidance when it comes out. Anything less will be Labour betraying the rights of women once again. Pressed an issue last year, Ms Fulton said, if you were someone who had gone through the formal process of recognition, you are, to all intents and purposes, for legal purposes, regarded as being in a different gender, regardless of the sex into which you were born. I would think that in those cases, people would be using female toilets. In her letter to Sir Chris about Ms Fulton's apparent new stance, Ms Badenoch said if ministers or advisers are found to have instructed civil servants to issue misleading material, then there's a clear route to resolve through resignation. Sir Chris and Dame Angela declined to comment. Right, so it just gets back to my theory. This is dead simple, this theory, right? It didn't take months of debating in my own head. I just thought one night, That's kind of it. Nobody wants to, I don't know, get all the transgender folk up and stick them in an island. That's not what's happening here. What's happening here is there's a minority, a very small, less than 1%, and some people suggest less than half of 1% of the people in our country are transgender. And there is perception that they have a need for some rights that they don't have just now, but most of them can't identify what their rights are. And I find that a bit bizarre. However, wanting to use women's toilets seems to be one of them. Now, what society needs to do in times like this is listen to the minority, whatever that minority is, and their need or their requirement. Then we need to consider, will allowing them whatever it is they want affect the majority of other people? Now, if it's a case like no, and I'll give you a good example. Lesbians and gay men wanted to be able to get married and have common law protection like folk like me. So, when you had a look at that, some people opposed it, but it really didn't affect them. It didn't really affect anybody other than the people involved, i.e. they could get married or have common law protection. So, society looked at that and thought, well, allowing you what you want and need doesn't really affect the majority in any negative way. So, yeah, let's do that. But when the minority need and want something that affects the majority or a good chunk of the majority, then we kind of need a serious discussion about that. And we can't just go, yeah, on you go, pee wherever you like, right? We have safe spaces. We have defined female and male spaces like toilets and changing rooms and refuges and stuff like that for good reason. So to be able to just get a certificate signed and say, no, I'm now one of them, I can now go into those safe spaces, that's just ridiculous. That does affect the majority of other people. So you kind of can't just go, yeah, there's a minority who feel persecuted in some way, let's just do whatever they want. That's not how you have society, because then we have everybody, just claiming whatever they want, and the rest of society just need to get on with it and accept it, even though people in the majority of society are negatively affected by it. Now, people go, how many trans people, assault women? Well, probably more of a portion of them than men, and there's too many men abuse and assault women. Staying up to date with events around the world can be difficult, where it's impossible to consult a single source for the full story. Narratives that shape public opinion often just reinforce media and corporate-backed vested interests. It's hard to know what information to trust. See what the media is exaggerating, sensationalising, over or under reporting. That's why I've been using Ground News. Ground News is an app and website that combines news from around the world in one place so you can compare coverage. For every news source, you can see if it has any political bias, how reliable the reporting is, and who owns them. They even have a blind spot feed that highlights news disproportionately covered by one side of the political spectrum. Take a data-driven view on the news and stay current. Get news from thousands of sources worldwide in one place. I've been using Ground News to help me get all the world's news in one place and give a more balanced opinion on what we read and viewing who is telling us the truth and who isn't. Subscribe via my link to get 40% off the Vantage subscription. It's the one I use to get unlimited access to every feature. Your subscription can not only help my channel, but also help Ground News, as it makes the media landscape more transparent. Right, proper guys who don't pretend they're women, right? So, and there's another mad thing, right? If you say, oh, men are terrible, men batter women, right? Then why would a man putting a dress on make him less likely to do it? All you're doing is then putting him in an area where it's more likely to happen. Quiet places like toilets and changing rooms. And then you've got to factor in like health clubs and swimming baths, etc., where people would expect a wee bit of nudity while they're getting changed. And you genuinely think, would you let somebody like me, a heterosexual man who has no desires at all to be a woman, walk in to a changing room at the local sports centre. Take all my clothes off in front of other women taking their clothes off. No, you wouldn't. Because some people would say, well, that's a bit strange because that guy could be a danger to those women. But the same people are quite happy if I put a dress on, a wig on, some big red specs and some makeup, put my pitch of my voice up a little bit and say my name's Claire, right? And I've got a GCR certificate to say I'm a woman now. It's ridiculous. Because you are then putting women in more danger. Yes, men are dangerous to women in certain circumstances. Not everyone is, but there are too many men who are a danger to women. But that also includes men who put dresses on. These people, the trans allies, for some reason, think that as soon as a man puts a dress on and presents as a woman, suddenly he becomes totally safe to women, to females. That's just nonsense. If anything, because of psychological makeup of most of these people, the men that, and I don't understand why women that want to be men are far easier to deal with. But and it's not every man that wants to be a woman that's a crackpot, but let's face it, there are a few of them. And I'm unsure how this guy putting a dress on suddenly doesn't become a danger to women. When every other guy walking about who presents as a man, these people say, oh, they're terrible, they abuse women all the time. It's crazy. Anyway, what a video. If you want others to see it, do 1, 2 or 3 of the following things. Hit the like button, it's dead easy, click the thumbs up. Put some comments below and hit the share, or any of those 3 things. That would be great. If you've not already done so, please consider subscribing to the channel. But most important of all, unless you're either a guy who wants to present as a woman and is adamant you need to get into women's bathrooms, changing rooms and refuges and sports, or you're the type of person who's not a guy who wants to dress as a woman but you want to support that nonsense, then no you. But
everyone else, have a great day. Cheerio, bye now.